The Matrix changed my life, and then over these years, it's changed so many other people's lives.
Keanu Reeves, now 60 years old, has shared something new about The Matrix. For many years, he didn't talk about it at all, but now he's finally speaking up. It all began when he gave an interview that touched his heart deeply. The famous actor kept quiet about the movie for a long time, but recently, in this special interview, he opened up. He talked about things he never mentioned before about the famous film series.
The amount of people that I've met who have said to me and been touched by The Matrix in such a positive way. It's the best.
Everyone knows that Keanu never really wanted to be super famous. In the late 1990s, people already knew him from movies like Speed, Point Break, and Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. But unlike other actors, he wasn't trying to become the biggest star. He preferred smaller, unusual films or even Shakespeare plays instead of playing the Hollywood game. So when he got the script for The Matrix, he didn't immediately say yes. In fact, he didn't even fully understand it at first. The Wachowskis had written something that seemed more like deep thinking about life than a normal action movie. The script talked about fake reality, control, and waking up from life's illusion. Not the usual stuff for a big movie. Most actors said no to the role. Will Smith turned it down to make Wild Wild West instead. Nicolas Cage said no because he wanted to stay with his family. The movie studio wasn't sure if it would be successful, and they definitely weren't counting on Keanu to make it work. But something about the script caught his attention. Maybe it was the mystery, maybe it was the challenge, or maybe he felt that this story was saying something important that no other Hollywood movie dared to say. He didn't understand everything right away, but he knew it mattered, so he agreed to do it. When the movie had money problems, Keanu gave up some of his pay so everyone on the crew could keep their jobs. This wasn't done to look good in public. It was just who Keanu really was. From the start, Keanu didn't play Neo like other action heroes. There was something quiet about how he acted, something unsure. Neo doesn't show off or yell. Instead, he pays attention, has doubts, and grows as a person. This journey matched Keanu's own experience with the role. He wasn't just stepping into the shoes of the one. He was trying to understand what being chosen actually meant. Behind the scenes, everyone noticed how thoughtful Keanu was. He asked deep questions about the story, not just about the fighting parts, but about the big ideas. What is real? How do we know we're truly free? If we don't really have choices, what's the point of anything? For Keanu, these weren't just lines to say, they were the heart of the story. This is what made him different from all the other actors the studio thought about. Most saw The Matrix as just a cool action movie with amazing effects. But Keanu saw it as a warning, a mirror to our world, something personal. He never tried to become the face of a huge movie series. Actually, when the film became super popular around the world, Keanu stepped away from the spotlight. While others might have used the fame to get more attention, Keanu spent his time riding motorcycles, enjoying quiet moments, and working on small projects. He never acted like someone who carried a billion-dollar movie on his shoulders because he didn't care about that part. Even today, when people ask about The Matrix, Keanu doesn't brag. Instead, he talks about the people who made it possible, the Wachowskis' vision, the hard work of the crew, how well the cast worked together. But every fan knows the movie wouldn't have succeeded without him. Neo was never supposed to be flashy. He was meant to be curious, vulnerable, and searching. In that way, Keanu Reeves wasn't just the perfect choice. He was the only choice. Not because he believed in The Matrix right away, but because slowly he let The Matrix believe in him. The Matrix seemed like just another sci-fi action movie on the surface. Black leather, kung fu fighting, slow-motion bullets, and cool special effects all wrapped in a sleek digital package. But underneath all this was a message, a quiet alarm bell hidden in code. And according to people who worked closely on the film, this message almost didn't make it to movie theaters. The Wachowskis were always interested in philosophy, especially ideas that question what we call reality. Their original script wasn't really about machines taking over the world, that was just how they delivered the real message. What they were truly trying to say was something much more uncomfortable. We're already in a prison, and we don't even see the bars. They got their inspiration from thinkers like Jean Baudrillard, who wrote about hyper-reality, where people live in fake versions of reality instead of the real thing. His book, Simulacra and Simulation, wasn't just something everyone on set had to read, it was actually part of the movie itself. Remember when Neo hides his illegal software in a hollowed-out copy of that book? That wasn't just a cool prop, it was a clue about what the movie was really about. But here's the problem. The movie studio didn't love these deep ideas. They wanted action. They wanted a big hit movie. While they liked the cool tech noir style on the surface, they got nervous when the film went too far into asking big questions. The more the Wachowskis tried to explore ideas about control, being watched, and free choice, the more the studio pushed back. Keanu, though, supported these deeper ideas. He quietly defended the film, not just how it looked, but what it meant. In interviews, he rarely talked about the stunts. Instead, he talked about freedom, about waking up, and about how maybe we're not as in control of our lives as we think we are. He wasn't acting like a big star. He was acting like someone who knew this story was more important than himself. There were early versions of The Matrix where Neo doesn't win. In these early versions, the illusion was too deep to escape. The system would just change and absorb anyone who tried to fight against it. But those darker versions didn't test well with audiences. The movie studio executives pushed for a cleaner story. They wanted a savior figure, a hero's journey, something that gave people hope and something they could sell tickets for. So some ideas were buried. Lines were made softer. Side stories were cut. The unclear parts were reduced. The machines became simple villains. The Matrix became just a computer program, and the deeper meanings were left for fans to discover on their own. But that warning, it never really disappeared. The red pill wasn't really about waking up from a world controlled by robots. It was about waking up from comfort, from daily routines we follow blindly, from systems that reward people who obey and punish those who ask questions. And that's why the film hit so hard with audiences. Not because of the special effects, but because deep down, people recognized the message. They saw themselves in Neo, not as the one, but as someone who was lost. Someone staring blankly at a screen, wondering if there's more to life than what they're being shown. Keanu once said when cameras weren't rolling that The Matrix wasn't science fiction, it was happening now. Maybe that's why Keanu kept coming back to play Neo year after year. Not because he wanted to be Neo, but because he knew people still hadn't heard what the movie was really saying. They still hadn't woken up. When people talk about The Matrix, they usually focus on the effects, the philosophy, and the amazing visuals. What they don't always talk about is the pain behind it. Not the physical challenges of being suspended on wires or months of martial arts training, but the emotional weight that Keanu Reeves carried with him onto that set. Before Neo ever died on screen, Keanu had already experienced more loss than most people could ever imagine. In 1999, the same year The Matrix was released, Keanu was going through a very sad time. Just a few months earlier, he and his partner Jennifer Syme had lost their baby daughter. She was stillborn at 8 months of pregnancy. This loss broke their hearts completely. Shortly after this tragedy, Keanu and Jennifer separated, though they stayed close friends. Then, less than 2 years later, Jennifer died in a car accident. Just like that, the family Keanu had almost started was completely gone. Yet, through all this pain, he kept working, quietly and steadily, without drawing attention to his personal suffering. Most people in the world didn't even know what he was going through, because Keanu wasn't the type to make his heartbreak public. He kept his grief inside, and somehow it found its way into every scene of the film. If you watch The Matrix again knowing what Keanu was experiencing, you'll see it differently. The scenes where Neo feels lost, disconnected from the world, and unsure about his purpose aren't just acting. They reflect Keanu's real feelings. He didn't have to try hard to show that sense of being alone. He was already living it. People who worked on the movie set later said he was focused but withdrawn. Always kind, but somewhat distant. He wasn't there to become famous. He was there to do his job. And that work, whether he admitted it or not, became a way to express himself, a way to deal with grief, a channel for feelings he couldn't put into words. There's a sadness in Neo that people don't talk about enough. Yes, he's the hero. Yes, he gets the girl and fights the bad guys. But even when he wins, there's a loneliness about him, a heaviness, like he knows the truth but can't share it with everyone. That haunting feeling of being disconnected isn't something you can fake, and Keanu didn't have to. Jennifer's death didn't just affect him personally. It changed how he approached fame, acting roles, and life itself. He stopped chasing big blockbuster movies. He would disappear between films. He rode motorcycles alone. When he walked on movie sets, he carried books in his hand, not bodyguards. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. When people asked why he stayed away from being famous, he often said, "I'm just passing through." but he never stopped being kind. Fans have many stories about Keanu's quiet giving. He gave up his seat on the subway. He bought ice cream for the movie crew just so he could sign the receipt for a child. He gave millions to children's hospitals without putting his name on it. It seems like he decided the only way to handle all his sadness was to keep giving parts of himself to others. In a funny way, the Matrix movie became like therapy for him. It was a world where pain had a reason, where loss could help you see things more clearly. Neo wasn't a superhero. He was just a person stuck in a world he didn't choose, trying to find meaning after everything fell apart. That was Keanu. That still is Keanu. And that's what people felt, even if they couldn't explain why. They saw themselves in his quiet sadness and strength. They felt the idea that maybe, even after losing everything, you could still find the courage to break free. Keanu never used his sad feelings to sell movies, but his pain was always there, just under the surface. This is one of the reasons why The Matrix didn't just entertain people, it touched their hearts. Behind all the slow-motion gunfights and computer code, there was a man trying to survive something very real. And somehow he turned that pain into something that will last forever. By the time The Matrix became super popular all around the world, people had big hopes for the next movies. Fans weren't just waiting for another film, they wanted answers. What is The Matrix really? What happens when you wake up? Is there something beyond the so-called real world? The Wachowskis, the directors, had big ideas, but not all of them made it into the movies. Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions weren't made too quickly, but they were carefully controlled. The movie studio wanted another hit, which meant more action, more amazing sights, and simpler storytelling, but that wasn't what they first planned to make. In the early versions, the next Matrix movies were much more deep-thinking, less clear-cut, and much braver. There was a version where Neo finds out that the real world isn't actually real. It's just another level of the fake world, a safety net for people who don't accept the Matrix but still need a system to live in. It was a controlled rebellion, a fake freedom. This story part was cut down to just one scene with the architect, full of hard-to-understand words and quick edits. Most people watching missed what it was trying to tell us. There were also plans to explore the spiritual side of the Matrix. The Wachowskis had included ideas about being born again, karma cycles, and how we're not really separate from each other. Neo and Trinity weren't just going to be lovers or rebels. They were soul-connected figures who kept coming back to help wake others up. But these deeper layers didn't do well when they showed early versions to test audiences. Too strange, too hard to understand. What stayed in the movies was still special but noticeably safer. The sequels added more fight scenes and chases but made the uncomfortable questions less sharp. Instead of being a disturbing mirror held up to our society, they became more like big sci-fi adventures. Still clever, still cool-looking, but less dangerous. Keanu never publicly criticized these changes. That's not how he is. But in some interviews, when asked about the deeper meanings, his answers got shorter and more unclear. It seemed like he didn't want to say the wrong thing, or maybe wasn't allowed to talk about it. Behind the scenes, people say he tried to keep some of the more challenging ideas in the movies. He really cared about the story world. He wanted to stay true to the feeling of the first movie, but in the end, even he had to follow the rules. The movie studio wasn't interested in making audiences uncomfortable. They wanted to keep making money from the series. That doesn't mean the sequels failed. They were ambitious, looked amazing, and had ideas most big movies wouldn't dare include. But for people looking for something deeper, something that echoed the first film's powerful message about control and what's real, the sequels felt incomplete, like a conversation that suddenly stopped. One of the biggest changes was the ending. In earlier ideas, Neo's final act wasn't meant to be a truce. It was supposed to be a complete rejection of the whole system, the Matrix, Zion, everything. A total reset. A wake-up call showing that no structure, not even a rebellion, could be trusted. But that version would have left too many questions and too little hope. It didn't fit what Hollywood wanted, so they changed it. Neo becomes like Jesus, sacrifices himself, and the machines agree to peace. It was neat and wrapped things up, but it wasn't the ending the story was first meant to have. For Keanu, that must have been frustrating. He had committed to something that wasn't just entertainment. It was truth hidden as fiction. And now some of that truth was being cut to fit in a box. Even years later, fans still talk about what the Matrix sequels could have been. What got lost along the way? What got left out? Through all this, Keanu stayed quiet and loyal. But you always felt that he knew something we didn't. that behind all the wire stunts and computer effects, something real had been buried, and it wouldn't stay buried forever. Before we talk about what Keanu finally revealed about The Matrix, we need to discuss one more thing: resurrection, or maybe reflection. The return of Neo. When The Matrix Resurrections was announced in 2019, people had mixed feelings. Some fans were excited, others doubtful. Why bring Neo and Trinity back after all this time? Was this just another revival of old movies, or was there something more? For Keanu Reeves, it was never just about bringing back a popular movie series. It was something very personal, and that made all the difference. The fourth film didn't come from a business meeting. It came from Lana Wachowski, who returned without her sister Lily. What made her revisit the world of The Matrix wasn't fan demand or money. It was sadness. She had recently lost both her parents and a close friend. Lana shared in interviews that bringing Neo and Trinity back to life was her way of dealing with loss. In her own words, "These two characters died and I didn't want to deal with that kind of grief, so I brought them back." This really connected with Keanu. He had already lost so much: his daughter, his partner, his friends. Here was a chance to go back to a world that understood that pain. A world that had always been about more than just machines and fake realities. So he said yes, not to do the same things again, but to help create a new kind of story. During the movie promotion tour, it was clear this wasn't the same Keanu from 1999. At 57, he was older, quieter, and thought more deeply about things. Yet he seemed even more connected to Neo than before. When asked how it felt to come back, he didn't talk about costumes or fight scenes. He talked about love, about memory, about the strange comfort of stepping back into something that never really left him. And the movie itself? It was nothing like what fans expected. Instead of making everything bigger, Resurrections went deeper. It asked questions about the nature of reboots, sequels, and storytelling itself. It showed The Matrix not as a dark world full of agents and leather jackets, but as something even more familiar. Social media, screens, endless distractions dressed up as freedom. Neo isn't the one anymore. He's Thomas Anderson again, stuck in a reality that feels wrong but is hard to explain. He takes medicine, is watched all the time, and is constantly told to ignore his feelings. Sound familiar? That was the point. The film was less about fighting robots and more about fighting the feeling that everything is fine when deep down you know it isn't. Trinity's return was just as strong. She wasn't just someone Neo loved. She was the other part that helped him wake up. She helped Neo remember who he really was. When they met again, even though it was in a science fiction story, their feelings were real and honest. Both the characters and the actors felt it deeply. It felt like an ending and a new beginning all at the same time. What made this even more touching was how Keanu acted in real life. During an interview with Esquire magazine about the new movie, someone showed him a video that fans made. The video had clips from his movies, behind-the-scenes moments, and times when he was kind to people. Keanu watched quietly. His eyes got watery. He didn't talk for a bit. Then all he could say was, "That's wow." It was one of the few times people saw him almost cry on camera. That moment wasn't about selling the movie. It was honest and showed more than any interview could. The Matrix Resurrections wasn't just about continuing a story. It was about going back to something that never felt completely done. It gave Keanu a chance to say things that weren't said before, to Neo, to Trinity, to the people watching, and maybe even to himself. It wasn't a comeback. It was more like picking up a talk that stopped 20 years ago. And in that talk, the truth was coming out. The part they made him hide. The part he was finally ready to talk about openly. The truth. In 2024, Keanu Reeves sat with Stephen Colbert to talk about The Matrix being 25 years old. Most people thought it would be a fun talk with maybe some jokes about bullet time or watching old clips. It started that way. Colbert showed scenes from Keanu's long career. But when they got to The Matrix, the mood changed. Keanu stopped smiling. His body position changed. When asked what the movie meant to him now, 25 years later, he looked down and said softly, "It changed my life." Then after waiting a moment, he added, "And I think it changed how people see the world." The audience got very quiet. The way he said it was different, not like an actor just talking about old times, but like someone who had been waiting for years to say something important. Colbert didn't ask more questions, but fans watching at home noticed it right away. What happened after that interview made that moment even more important. People who know Keanu said he talked more openly after the interview. For the first time in 20 years, he shared what had been kept secret. what people told him not to talk about. That moment changed everything because after all these years, at age 60, Keanu Reeves finally told the truth about The Matrix. In a quiet talk with close friends and co-workers a few months after the Colbert interview, Keanu didn't just give hints, he spoke clearly. The Matrix was never about robots or the future, he said. It was about now, about how we're already stuck in systems we don't see. Then he said something nobody expected. They made me hide this, he told them. There were parts in the early script where Neo finds out that even the so-called real world is part of the trick, a second layer, another Matrix. But the studio said it was too much, too confusing, too risky. He continued, they didn't want people questioning what's real like that. They wanted a story they could sell, a hero, a love story, a clear bad guy. Not something that makes you look at your phone and wonder if you're actually free. To the people who heard him talk, he didn't sound angry. He sounded tired, like someone who had been keeping a secret for too long. And it made sense, because over the years, fans have noticed the same strange things. The deep ideas that never fully came together. The early stories about more extreme endings. The careful way Keanu stayed away from talking about the deeper meaning in interviews. It all makes sense now. But these days, he's finally speaking up. He reportedly told one close friend, The Matrix was supposed to wake people up, but the final version just put them back to sleep, entertained them instead of setting them free. Then he added, and I went along with it because back then I didn't know how much I was allowed to say. Just that one comment changes everything. Neo was never meant to be someone who saves us from machines.